Welcome everybody to Open Arts. My name is Patty. I'm happy to be hosting today. We've got Denny Masonic on, entrepreneur, audio engineer, microphone designer. He's doing it all, so I'm really excited to have him on the program. If you're just finding us here on social media or YouTube, don't forget to check our calendar at singforhope.org/calendar. You can see all the great programs we have coming up, all the various artists and concerts and fascinating discussions we have coming right to your living room. I am really excited about today's event, but before we get started, I'd like to share a quick word from our founding sponsor, Unitex. Stay tuned. Sing for Hope extends a special thank you to Unitex, a founding sponsor of Open Arts, for making this program possible. Unitex Healthcare Laundry Services is the largest family-owned and operated healthcare linen and uniform rental company in the country and has been serving the Northeast region for 100 years. Sing for Hope is grateful for their generous support. All right, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest today here on Open Arts. I borrowed this from Gear Patrol Denny. Denny Masonic is a man of many talents, and he manages to put them all to use, running multiple businesses simultaneously. A 2013 graduate of the University of Michigan, go Blue, we just beat Ohio State, with a degree in sound engineering, Masonic quickly established himself with Masonic microphones, handcrafting ribbon microphones in Detroit, Michigan. Ribbon microphones for the uninitiated are incredibly delicate to use, let alone engineer, and these early efforts gave Masonic the experience he needed to begin his second business venture, Pelton, in 2016. Pelton's purpose is to bring luxury watchmaking to the USA like never before, and indeed, Masonic manufactures as many components as possible, including a steel bracelet, in his Detroit facility using his own machinery. In 2019, not content to simply rest on his horological laurels, he launched an eyewear collection of handcrafted sunglasses using materials from leading suppliers in the eyewear industry. So please welcome Denny Masonic. Hey, Denny.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm so happy to have you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's great to reconnect, and I've been following you and keeping up with everything that you're doing in the last several years.
Welcome everyone to Open Arts. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Patty.
Let me correct
I'm really excited to be hosting today's event, Careers in the Arts. We have some really exciting musicians with us.
Right, pause, Denny.
2 out of 3. We'll get the no worries.
My technological problems.
But before we do anything, we want to share a brief word from our sponsor. So stay tuned. Sing for Hope extends a special Open Arts for making this program possible.
All right, solve some impossible technical difficulties. We're working on the fly. Denny, I'm bringing you back on. Sorry about that. I had a computer glitch, and who knows what was happening. I am excited to have you on the program, though. So for those watching, Denny and I went to school together at the University of Michigan, and it was fun to see him take off after college, starting Masonic microphones, starting Pelton, and also bringing some manufacturing to Detroit, Michigan. So, Denny, to get started, tell me about how this started. Tell me about right after college, what happened that you launched this entrepreneurial career designing all these products?
Yeah, well, I mean, it started when we were in school. I guess that senior thesis we had. So my senior thesis was to make a ribbon microphone. So that's what I did, and really enjoyed it, and kind of knew like that senior year I wanted to go more towards the technical side of audio engineering, designing products and things like that, rather than working in a recording studio. So after school, kind of took that ribbon mic and went to a couple of local studios in Metro Detroit. And the guys there really liked it. So I figured, all right, let's just spend the summer trying to make this mic as good as possible. So I just took what money I had, bought an old mill and an old lathe, and then just, on my free time when I wasn't working for my summer job, just started making mics, tweaking them, always constantly taking them to these studios, and kind of made some relationships within the Detroit, studio world. So the engineers enjoyed, having me around and bringing them new mics to try and all that. And I think within like 3 or 4 months, I had like a really awesome mic that they all genuinely love to use. So I figured, all right, let's just give this a shot. Let's figure out how to make it, cosmetically pleasing. And then luckily right outside of Detroit, where I'm at, is one of the biggest pro audio dealers in the U.S. called Vintage King Audio. So I figured, all right, well, we got to get this in a store. I got to sell this somehow. So I just walked in there and met those guys, gave them the mic, and took like 2 or 3 months of, going back and forth, figuring out, packaging and the marketing angle and all that. And by the wintertime of 2013, I was in Vintage King Audio and selling mics. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of hitting the pavement.
Yeah. Right after school. So graduated April, and then by December selling mics. So it went
That's
quick.
incredible. So you kind of mentioned how you always had a mind to go kind of more the technical route.
Yeah.
In the audio engineering world. But did you ever expect to own your own business?
No, honestly, I didn't. It was just I honestly didn't even know what I was getting myself into. I was like, let's just make these mics and see if anyone will buy them. I've got the machines to, hand make them. So I was making every little component on manual machines. So it would take hours and hours and hours to make one microphone, and have it look, like a professional product. I couldn't just, crank out some pipes from Home Depot or something and try to sell it. I had to look nice. So, it took a while for the orders to start going in, because, it's a new product. People don't know it. There's all these established microphone companies, but I'd say after like 18 months, 2 years, it started to sell. And then it got to the point where, okay, well, I can't keep making these things by hand. I have to actually now invest in this business properly. And that's when, things really took off. I had to go out and find a CNC machine, find some other unique machines used for building microphones. And that was really, when I decided, okay, this is a plausible business. Let's do this.
So going back to the beginning though, so our listeners might not be so in the know with the microphone industry, but there's a lot of subjectivity behind microphone design. Not everyone agrees on what makes a microphone great.
Mm-hmm.
So can you speak a little on what to you makes a microphone great, and what was your vision when you first set out and you were trying to make a great microphone?
Yeah, well, the microphone, I should say the whole pro audio world is very nostalgic to equipment used in the past, because it really is, phenomenal equipment. So most of the stuff coming out today are just, recreations of prior equipment with, some slight modifications, maybe a better, build structure or whatever. But they're all based on something. So the idea behind my ribbon mic was, well, specifically choosing a ribbon mic. So for the audience that might not know, there's 3 types of microphones, and that's 3 different principles in which they transfer acoustic energy to electrical energy. Ribbon mics is probably the least known and least used mic. They're mostly used in recording studios. They're really not used for, live sound or stage performances, just because they're a little fragile. They're not really meant for that. But it's kind of a neglected technology. All the other types of microphones have had all sorts of improvement in the last 50 or 60 years, but ribbon mics have just kind of stood still and not much has happened. So I really went down a deep, deep rabbit hole about, why that is. And it's mainly because they're really dark sounding microphones. And nowadays, it's all about clarity. It's got to have clarity. It's got to be bright. Things got to sound shiny, which isn't always what you want in a recording studio, but it's a good starting point. So I just figured out how I could take this dark sounding microphone and, through some research, through some math, through some trial and error, make it sound more like these other types of microphones, which hadn't been done up until now. So that was really the selling point of the mic. And it was strange at first when when people started hearing this thing, because they couldn't wrap their heads around that this is a ribbon mic, but it sounds like these other mics, but it also has the cool characteristics of a ribbon mic that make it cool. That people like to use it in a studio because it has that kind of rich body sound to it. But now you throw in a little, high frequency clarity and all that, and then you've got kind of like the best of both worlds. So that's really the gist behind the mic.
So keeping in mind that we might have listeners that haven't opened up a microphone like you and I have done just in our spare time, just to see what's inside.
Yeah.
We talk, like audio engineers talk about words like a rich, would you say, a rich body and a shiny top end.
Yeah.
And it's these abstract concepts that we're hearing, and some of us kind of agree on what those words mean. But when you're designing a microphone, there are actual, real, concrete, physical aspects of the microphone that are kind of resulting in those characteristics, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of characteristic? Like what's going to affect the top end of a microphone? What's going to affect the rich low end, the accuracy, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, microphones are, a really simple but also complicated electrical and acoustical devices. So you've got your electronic component, which are the various electronic components in the microphone if they require it, and then you've got your acoustical components, which is anything around what is actually capturing the sound. So the way a ribbon mic works is quite literally aluminum foil that you have at your house, but very, very, very thin version.
I'll go get the Reynolds wrap.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it'll work.
Yeah.
But so there's a thin strip of aluminum it's 7 microns thick. So it's about 50 times thinner than your hair. If you were to just rub it in your hand, it would just disintegrate. And that's suspended between 2 magnets. And when you speak or sing, or when you're recording acoustic energy, that foil vibrates back and forth, which, because it's in a magnetic field, it'll induce a current to the wires hooked up to it. And then that is then amplified by an amplifier or any amplification device afterwards. And that's how you record what that is picking up. So it's picking up acoustic energy, transferring it into electrical energy, and then that's being recorded. And then everything around that ribbon and around those magnets affect the sound. So my trick was to figure out what I could put in front and behind that ribbon and have it alter the sound. So that could be any number of things. It can be, here's one of our mics. So it could be just this windscreen. It could be the fabric that's behind it, or it could be what's inside here, which I can't really share, but there's a secret in here going on with 2 metal plates in front and in the back of the ribbon. And they're creating some acoustic trickery to alter the sound of that microphone. So, and that acoustic trickery is not random. It's through a lot of mathematical formulas determined by, it's quite complex, but there's various formulas in acoustics that are transferable from microphones to room acoustics to all sorts of things. And if you can figure out how to apply that formula to what you're working on, then you can really solve what you're trying to do and create, solve the problem at hand.
So when you were designing, you had this in mind that you're going to try and make a ribbon microphone that has kind of a brighter top end than some of the ribbon microphones of yore. So were you were just kind of doing the math to figure out how that was going to happen, or was there trial and error involved?
Yeah, so it was, make a baseline ribbon mic, which is my senior thesis, was just a standard ribbon mic, sounded like most ribbon mics, just dark, and whatnot. And then it was, okay, let's increase the top end. So then kind of digging through like old RCA patents that are like 50, 60 years old, and seeing like, is there any type of microphone where someone used any sort of acoustical mechanical device to change the frequency of the microphone, to change its response, rather than doing it through an electrical circuit? And then I figured, I try to apply some of these old patents to it. And then once I had something going, then that was the baseline. And then through measurements and what this apparatus is, it just kind of clicks, and then how, like, what formula to look at. And then once you know the formula and you can apply it to what, this type of acoustical device, you can design a ribbon mic structure to make, you can make it sound however you want. So, and then you can control how much, how high frequency extension you want, or you can control how dark you want it. It's all really just the structure of it. And once you understand the acoustical, mechanical formulas around that structure, you can manipulate it to sound however you want. So
it sounds like you make it sound like cooking, like once you kind of know the basic recipe you can play, and
it's a recipe. Yeah. And once you know once you understand the formula and you can wrap your head around that, it's all just, plug and play,
I've got a question. I've got a curveball question for you, which is just, you talk about the ribbon being, did you say, I think you said 7 microns thick.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's
how do you handle that?
It's 1.8 microns, which is 0.00007 inches thick. The 7 was inches.
Right. So how do you handle that? How do you move it around and put it in
Yeah, so that took quite a while. You can't breathe. You obviously have to hold your breath. Well, when you cut it, so there's 2 ways you could cut it. At first, we were sandwiching it between, I guess what would you call it? Like tracing paper, I guess is the best term. So you'd kind of take this sheet of foil, glue it down on the ends on some tracing paper, put another piece of tracing paper on top of it, and that way you can cut it with an X-Acto knife, and you keep the foil safe, but you have, that tracing paper that you can move around easily, and form it, because the ribbon can't be flat. It needs to be formed to have some structural rigidity, so that once air hits it, it doesn't fall apart. So a standard practice is to corrugate it, so it goes through 2. You take that thin ribbon sheet or strip, and you feed it through 2 gears, and as the gears turn, they put a wave into the ribbon, and you do that with the paper. Sandwiching the ribbon, because if you weren't, it would just fall apart. And then you take the paper off, and you've got a perfect little ribbon that's corrugated and ready to go. So
I got to tell you, Denny, every time I've ever opened up my MacBook Pro and I've turned those screws, I lose one of them every single time.
Yeah,
I can't imagine like handling this just tiny object.
Various tweezers. I've got all sorts of tweezers.
So as an example, I've got a clip here to share with our listeners of you building a transformer for the Model 2 microphones. So we were talking about the recipe and how all these components impact the sound. So just so we kind of know what we're watching, can you kind of tell us what a transformer is and how it might kind of impact the sound?
Sure, yeah. So a transformer is basically just a passive electrical component. So it's basically for the simplest version of a transformer, you have 2 sets of wire that are wound tightly around some sort of core. And that core is usually some sort of steel, iron, nickel, silicon. And what that does is it's the first winding of wire induces an electrical current on that core. And then the second winding basically transfers that to the other side of the transformer. So 2 sets of windings on a steel core, and it's an electromagnetic device. And depending on the ratio of your first set of windings to the second set of windings, you can either amplify, or you can step up or step down voltages. So we've all got transformers in a lot of the things we have in our homes. Desktop computers have them. If your MacBook charger has a little transformer in it, and that's that little brick you plug into the wall. So it's taking 124 volts that is in your home, and it's got to step it down to a lower voltage that your MacBook can take, so it doesn't blow up or fry.
So with the microphone, when you're stepping up or stepping down voltages, we're actually talking about gain, right? Or for a very simplified explanation, volume.
Volume, yes. You're amplifying that signal. So the voltage coming off a ribbon mic, right at the point of that ribbon, is very, very low. It's just a couple millivolts, which you can't record, you can't do anything with. So you really have to amplify that. And internally in the microphone, there's a transformer. In which case, in our microphone, the ratio between those 2 windings I was talking about is 1 to 36. So we're going to amplify that voltage 36 times. So that way, when you hook that microphone up to a microphone amplifier, it'll be at a good enough level where that amplifier can further amplify it, and then you can record it and use it however you see fit. So that's basically what a transformer does. In the audio world, transformers are a little more technical than a power transformer that I just talked about in your MacBook Pro, or that your refrigerator has, or your washing machine. In the audio world, it's all about the sound. So you've got your standard electrical theory behind it. You need to step up or step down the voltage, but it also needs to sound good. Which for a power transformer in your fridge, it doesn't matter how it sounds. It's doing one purpose. So that's kind of the transformers in audio are really since recording equipment has been around. It's the magic. That's where the magic happens. Every transformer sounds different. Certain pieces of audio equipment, use certain transformers that aren't made today, that can't be made today because there's scarcity of materials, or people just don't want to make them. So yeah, transformers are a very deep rabbit hole for in the audio world, but it's something that we had to do for the microphone, because the microphones we make are 100% made in the U.S. and they're actually every component is made in our shop here. So we get raw materials in all from suppliers in the U.S. and then all the machining, assembly, components inside the microphone, like the transformer, they're all made here. So had to learn how to make transformers, and that was,
that alone is an accomplishment in the U.S. So here's a clip showing the meticulous craftsmanship going into every Masonic microphone. So this is the making of a Masonic microphone transformer. There's something very satisfying about watching that process.
Yeah.
Really cool. So we've been talking about microphones a lot, but you've also expanded since the founding of Masonic Microphones, and you've been making studio monitors now too, with speakers. Yeah. Was that just starting all over again, designing an entirely new product, or was there some experience you gained from building microphones that kind of lent itself to that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just another deep dive into a rabbit hole. Like, I spent most of my Sunday nights just researching stuff. And I noticed that in the pro audio world, the studio world, and the hi-fi world, ribbon tweeters, which is basically a ribbon microphone wired in reverse. So instead of transferring acoustical energy to electrical energy, there's a ribbon tweeter transfers electrical energy to acoustic energy. So it's just a ribbon microphone, but just in reverse. playing sound. So a tweeter is the, I don't know if your users or listeners probably have some speakers in their home where you've got, the big woofer in the bottom, and then you've got that little tweeter up top. So the tweeter plays the high frequency of a song. And ribbon tweeters are very rare. Some really high-end hi-fi speakers use them, but they're rare in the audio world, the pro audio world. There's tweeters that are called ribbon tweeters, but they're not really ribbon tweeters, from companies. I don't know if the listeners are familiar with Atom monitors or head monitors. Similar thing, but they're not like a true aluminum ribbon tweeter. So I figured let's just try to make one, and then just for myself as a hobby, for a pair of speakers for myself, let's try to make a ribbon tweeter. Did that. They sounded phenomenal. I never heard a ribbon tweeter up until that point, and I thought, wow, this is why don't all speakers have these things in them? They just sounded so good, and just kept researching. And then maybe a year went by, and I thought I had a really awesome ribbon tweeter, and I figured let's just do a proper studio monitor, considerably more expensive than my microphones. The amount of work that goes into a ribbon tweeter is probably on par with a microphone. And then you've got all your other components of the speaker too, and the amplifiers and everything. So same thing I did with the microphones. I built a pair, took them to the studios. They shot them out against their other speakers. They loved them. And I said, all right, let's sell these things. So now with the speakers, I don't make the enclosures, the speaker boxes here. They're made for us by a company in California. Just because I love metalworking. I don't like woodworking, and I don't have the time to get the machinery for that.
Yeah, different animal, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so we source some of the components here in the U.S. and then the amplifiers. Denmark has a few companies that make really, really nice amplifiers for hi-fi speakers and studio monitors. So we sourced those from there, and then just paired it up with our ribbon tweeter and a couple other components, subwoofer, a mid-range driver, and yeah, now we're selling studio monitors. So that's kind of. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you're selling studio monitors, but you mentioned that it sounds like there's quite a market in the hi-fi, the audiophile world for ribbon tweeters.
Yeah, there is. And there's I'd say in the last year or two, there's becoming quite an overlap between people in the hi-fi world starting to use studio monitors, and also people in the studio world starting to use some hi-fi speakers. So the ribbon tweeter is unique because it comes mostly from the hi-fi world, but then you combine it with, our customer base and how we're marketing it as a studio monitor. So you've kind of got the best of both worlds. It's very pleasing to listen to for hi-fi users, but it's also very accurate for studio users that need, an accurate sounding speaker so they know what they're mixing and can make a proper mix to transfer, to everyday listeners and make it sound good on these. So
yeah, absolutely. Denny, I want to take a second. I don't know if you noticed, Ernest chimed in the comments with a we love this question. Are vacuum tubes still relevant?
Yeah, I actually just got shocked by a vacuum tube the other day.
That doesn't sound great.
Yeah. I was.
You use them in your work?
Not me personally. So we do some OEM work for some other companies. We make transformers for them, and a lot of the times they'll send me their equipment, and then I'll just put our transformers in it, run the test for them on our, on our specific software, send it back to them, and we'll just go back and forth. Especially if these companies are out of state, it's a lot easier for me to get their equipment and then run the tests for them. And then if I need to make tweaks to these transformers, I can just do it on the spot rather than going back and forth. So yeah, I had someone send me a compressor, which is another audio unit used to compress the dynamics of audio. And I had it open, and it was plugged in. The rails on the tubes were hot, and I just kind of, it's been so long since I've worked on tube equipment. I just kind of, there it was, a nice little zap and a nice little burn.
At least it was a compressor and not a power amp.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Luckily.
So I love that question though, because it kind of ties in with when you first started talking about designing a microphone, and you were saying how vintage is the word vintage or the word retro, or captures everybody's attention. So I think for that reason, vacuum tubes are still pretty relevant in the audio world because
vacuum tube. Yeah,
everyone goes, oh,
vacuum tubes are all over the place. I mean, some of the best sounding microphones ever made are all vacuum tubes, and the ones made today are all vacuum tubes. Tubes in equalizers, tubes in compressors, tubes in microphone amplifiers. They're everywhere in pro audio. I mean, everywhere. So very relevant. Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Ernest. That was a great question.
Yeah.
So you were touching on building OEM transformers. How did that come about?
Yeah, so that was just another. So COVID started, and I would say initially, there was like the initial shutdown, and then once things started picking back up, there was just a free for all on the market to get as many components as these companies could get to stock their shelves so that they could continue to build their products. But most transformers are not, off the shelf items for these pro audio companies. They're made to order. They're very specific for their equipment. And a lot of these transformer companies, most of the transformers are made by 3 or 4 companies, 2 of which are here in the US. They just got, swamped with orders. They couldn't really get a hold of the raw materials. And it really created, a shortage of transformers for these other pro audio companies. So there's 2 audio companies here in Metro Detroit that also, they make microphone amplifiers, compressors, equalizers, things like that. And they couldn't get their hands on these transformers, and they knew I had been making microphone transformers. So I said, all right, well, let's just try it. So it was kind of a gamble because I had to get different type of machinery for these transformers. My microphone transformers are circular. They're toroidal is what they're called. So that machine you saw in the video is specifically designed for that type of transformer, versus these transformers were more of a standard, what you would call bobbin transformer. So I had to get 2 separate machines. I took the gamble because I saw the opportunity, and I figured, if these companies it was like a 1-year lead time for these companies to get transformers. So I was like, well, if I get this machine up and running in like a month and get all the materials, why not do it? So started making, I think, 3 or 4 separate parts for this specific company in Detroit, and they started spreading the word. And now I'm just completely swamped with transformers.
Wow, good for you. What silver lining of pandemic for you?
Yeah, it was a risk. I honestly did not know what I was getting into because completely different machinery, completely different type of transformer, and now you're not making it for your product; you're making it for another company. So there's 0 room for failure. At least if I fail here, I can just redo it.
Right.
Halt the production line and redo it. But when you're making them for someone else, everything's got to be perfect. So
that's incredible. I mean, we heard, obviously we've all heard about the supply chain shortages and workforce shortages and all these things from pandemic plaguing small business owners. So it's great. It's great that you saw a silver lining, or that you saw an opportunity.
Yeah.
So, all right,
fortunate.
Denny, you know that I will talk about pro audio gear all day with you, but our listeners kind of think that we're speaking Russian or something. So let's talk about your other business venture, Pelton. So, maybe what our listeners wouldn't expect after hearing you explain transformers is that you've kind of become something of a fashion designer. You're creating these. Here, let's see. You're creating these absolutely beautiful watches and sunglasses, luxury goods, all coming out of Pelton.
Mm-hmm.
So this is different. This is different than a microphone. So tell us about how this venture came about.
Yeah, so I've since I was little, I've been a watch nut. I've always collected watches, automatic wristwatches. Nothing fancy, just what I could get my hands on. Little Seikos, Timexes that are automatic and stuff like that, old watches. And there was I think 2017, around that time, 2018, there was a point where, I have all these CNC machines making these microphones, but you can only make so many components. I mean, CNC machines can make hundreds of thousands of parts a year. And I'm not making hundreds of thousands of microphones. I'm making, several hundred, up to maybe a few thousand components a year on these machines for these microphones. So they were just kind of sitting idle, and, Christmas time came around. I gave myself a 2-week break. I said, let's just make myself a watch for Christmas. So I just luckily, the two CNC machines I have, I mean, they're machines that cut metal, so you can theoretically make anything on them. And watches are made from stainless steel. Our mics are made from stainless steel. So the machine was already tooled up with the proper tools to cut stainless steel. So I just decided to make a watch case. It kind of worked out. I wore it. I thought it was cool. And I figured, well, okay, if these machines are sitting idle for, several weeks out of the year, if not several months, let's just make let's make some watch parts on them and make a website, get a brand going and see what happens. Was not expecting to do full on, because I have my microphone company. So that is the priority. So I started making these watches and people just absolutely love them. And the more I dove into it, the more I realized not a lot of watch companies are based in America, and the ones that are based here are not even making the components here. It's all Switzerland. For high-end watches, it's all mainly Switzerland, some Italian components. And then for the lower-end watches, it's usually Taiwan or China. And Japan, you've got Japan with Seiko. So I just did some research, figured no one was making a metal watch bracelet in the US. And I was like, oh, well, it can't be that hard. I've got the machinery to do this. Like, it looks pretty simple. So it took a few months on my spare time of when I wasn't, making the microphones to just kind of figure out how to do it, prototype a bracelet, make the proper tooling I needed, just constant research. And anytime I got some free time, I was just constantly researching how do the Swiss do it, because they're the masters of watchmaking. So just reading online forums, watching videos on YouTube, figuring out like what type of machinery they're using. And luckily, a lot of the machinery was kind of like a crossbreed between the ones I'm using now and, standard polishing machines that might be slightly tweaked or things like that. So I got the machinery, and then it finally developed the Perseus is what it's called. So it's this watch here. It's a very industrial looking watch, and it's got that bracelet I had mentioned. Entirely machined here in our shop and then fully assembled. So yeah, I made it, and then I had to figure out how do I market this thing. So it was mostly Instagram. The watch world on Instagram is absolutely.
Who wouldn't like a photo like this on Instagram? That's what I want to know.
Huh?
That's beautiful. I said, who wouldn't like a photo like this on Instagram?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And the watch world on Instagram is absolutely insane. I mean, just crazy watch collectors, enthusiasts, people that are just obsessed with watches, and it's just an awesome community. People are super friendly. So I wasn't really it's not really a fashion watch. It's more of like a high-end watch enthusiast collector watch, mainly because of the components in it. It's an automatic watch. It's, made in the US. It's got the only American-made bracelet. So they just ate it up. They loved it. Started getting some publicity on Gear Patrol, Worn and Wound, which is a fairly popular watch site. Did a couple watch shows. So started selling them. Not many, but all made to order, all for true watch enthusiasts. And I'm very open to like customizing them, getting if you want your name engraved on it, you can do that and all that stuff. So after that, I figured, all right, well, let's just see what the next cool product is. And I guess it was sunglasses, because I like sunglasses too.
So, but that's entirely different though, because now you're talking about you're not doing metalworking. You're working with
acetate. Yep.
Of some kind. Okay.
Yep.
So that must be really different to learn, right?
Well, you can still use the same CNC machinery. So you basically get planks of acetate that are maybe 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch thick, and they're just kind of like sheets, and you clamp them down on your CNC machine, and then you basically rough mill the shape of the front here. You kind of just mill this component out, and then you'll mill this component out. And then the next step is you have to form it and bend it, and you have to put these metal bars that go through it for support, which is a whole different thing and lots of specialized machinery. So that part, I got lucky and I found someone, locally that does it's called thermal forming for plastics. And basically I give him the raw components when they're cut. We have molds, they bend them, they come back to me, basically put these in a tumbler that, gets rid of all the little scratches on them, or just any extra stuff on them, and then use the same polishing machines that you would use to polish a watch for the sunglasses, pop in the lenses, and yeah, you got sunglasses.
Incredible. It's really, I mean, it's art, it's sculpting. It's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so all of this is kind of like a mix of a crossbreed of art, industrial design, machining for the microphones, electronics, acoustics for the watchmaking. Also, is a mechanical watch, so a lot of mechanical components there. It all just kind of like works together. They're all very separate products, but they're all made on basically the same machinery using the same principles. So it all just kind of makes sense.
If you say so, Denny. So to any of our listeners, if you'd like to chime in with a question, please feel free. In the meantime, my last question for Denny is, you're finding all the common ground between these different products, and it makes me wonder what the future holds for you. So between Masonic microphones and Pelton, you're already producing microphones, studio monitors, watches, sunglasses, leather goods. So are there more products coming, or is there?
So
are you gonna find a third business venture of some kind, maybe?
No more completely new products, just new versions of the existing products. Since COVID started, I've just been so busy with the microphones, the speakers, and the OEM parts, the transformers for these other companies. I've had to stop taking orders of the watches, and it kind of worked out nicely because I was planning to do like a version 2.0 of the two watch models I have to give them some cosmetic updates and kind of make some tweaks on them. So right now, I'm not taking any orders on that. I'm working on the tweaks on that. And then once that's ready, we'll pick up on the wait list, get the waitlist customers their watches. And then after that's complete, I believe I'm going to start working my way into more of the studio monitors and the hi-fi speakers. That's definitely, I definitely see more interest from non-audio people into speakers in their homes than I've ever seen. I mean, there's so many great options now. Even some of the sound bars that are out there sound really phenomenal. So there's definitely an interest in audio now. And I think, it's definitely something I want to explore and, do some more hi-fi stuff, some more consumer grade speakers and things like that. So that's kind of the next step. So
incredible, Denny. Thank you so much for coming on Open Arts with me.
Yeah, it was great.
Appreciate having you. Everybody, please check out masonicmicrophones.com and peltonusa.com. I got both of those right, Denny?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yep. For more great products from Denny Masonic. And be sure to check out syncforhope.org/calendar to see all the great upcoming programs we have tomorrow. You can join us for the dance dialogues at 4:00. And please consider visiting syncforhope.org/donate to learn how you can contribute to Open Arts. Thanks so much, everybody. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their evening, and we'll see you at an Open Arts program soon. Thanks, everybody.